If we would have spoken 6 months ago, we wouldn't have talked about COVID-19, and we would have mostly talked about our oncology pipeline, because that was our main focus. And then suddenly this disease came up, and we realized that we had a drug to treat COVID-19.
The work that Aperion is doing at the moment is extremely relevant. Your APNO1 enzyme, I believe, is in clinical development, and it has been applied to the treatment of COVID-2, SARS, and it reduces viral infection and inflammation. Now, has this treatment been able to affect COVID-19 in any way, and how is the treatment being developed to work against the current pandemic?
When our founder, Joseph Penninger, developed this drug, he thought, yeah, well, look, this could be good for a pandemic like SARS, but in the end, only 8,000 people were affected, and it didn't really transcribe. And then at the beginning of this year, we realized that the SARS-CoV-2 was in fact a mutation or a further development of SARS, so we immediately checked to see whether we could use the data, existing data, or new data to support the start of a clinical trial. And in fact, the 5 clinical trials we've done so far in respiratory diseases, the 90 patients we treated in phase 1 and phase 2, plus preclinical data is very promising for us. So then we decided to approach the development with a late-stage, placebo-controlled, double-blinded phase 2b trial in 200 patients, with the goal to enable speedy approval in the EU and in other countries. Other developers decided to go for preliminary preclinical and phase 1 data, but we already had that. So their data is becoming to trickle in, showing promising results, but they still need the larger trials to separate any contenders from the pretenders in this case. And also, we think we're one of the most advanced in this process. So we still need caution. All these trials which are ongoing are taking away patients from others. Obviously, if there are hundreds of trials ongoing at the moment. So these rapidly designed clinical trials have left the community with more questions than answers. In the end, with so many trials ongoing, with so many different ways of treating the disease, there are so many questions still around. We don't know many things, but we do know one thing, that our drug is, as an ACE2 receptor, the keyhole to stop COVID-19 for entering the cell, and also to reduce viral infection and inflammation. So we're very confident that this could be the promised drug which we're treating patients with right now.
You mentioned that kind of need for careful process, even though there are promising early signs. Many people are hopeful that in the next 18 to 24 months, there will be a COVID-19 vaccine or an effective COVID-19 treatment. Now, this is possibly a lot faster than it usually takes to develop a vaccine. Is the time frame that, considering that every pharmaceutical company, biotechnological company in the world has focused their attention in some way on COVID-19, is the time frame that many are hoping for 12 months to 24 months too optimistic? And if so, what can be done to make people's expectations more reasonable?
Well, obviously, we've heard various things. I won't mention the company, but they mentioned that they already have a drug that will be approved towards the end of this year. Okay, there is a need for speed, but I'd be very, very cautious about this, because the key concern is that these vaccines, which have not developed in the stage 2, stage 3 cases yet, they could cause new diseases, right? Although these antibody-dependent enhancements or other mechanisms which cause these new diseases, we don't know at this moment in time. And vaccine development is generally a long game. It takes usually 10 years to develop a vaccine. And the US FDA have said that they would help and support the quick approval. But let's look at it. They only recently approved the first vaccine against Ebola last year. It was 43 years after the virus had been developed or discovered. And HIV, there's no vaccine. Respiratory syncytial virus, huge investments have been made. There are no vaccines. So I'll be very, very careful, because with the COVID-19 crisis, everyone hoping it will be different. But 10 vaccines are already in clinical development to treat acute respiratory syndrome and the coronavirus 2 in this case here. And these clinical trials are ongoing. Optimists believe that there will be enough vaccine doses available within the next 12 months. The WHO lists more than 100 candidates in preclinical development. I personally think that many of these programs exist only on paper, and there may be a few candidates which come through, but I think the 18 months is still optimistic. So by mid next year at the earliest is still very, very optimistic from my point of view.
You also have that. Would you say that you have a sort of a head start in a way, as you had already worked on a drug effective in treatment of SARS?
Yes, and treatment of ARDS, ALI, and PAH. So we've been treating this drug for various diseases, all related to respiratory issues.
Some of those who we've spoken to have talked about the importance of public-private collaboration, not just in terms of COVID treatment, but in terms of the importance of the pharmaceutical and biotech industries as a whole. Now, having been in Austria for the last few months during this pandemic outbreak, have you been satisfied by the collaboration of the Austrian government in helping biotech companies in fighting against COVID-19?
It's been amazing. I must admit, I would never have expected this to happen in such a way. The Austrian government were very proactive. The moment this came up, they spoke to all scientists, all people who were very closely related to a possible treatment of this disease. And we had roundtable discussions with the chancellor, with the government, with the science people, and we were working on solutions. And they immediately promised money. Most of these companies are cash-strapped, obviously. They immediately promised money and support and loans and guarantees to further develop it. That happened early March, right when the disease was still, it was still not considered as a pandemic at the time. So that was very quick, very fast. And since then, we've got amazing grants. We've got amazing support from the Austrian government. The most amazing thing, although, is that you have, because it's a small country, contact to the major players. You don't have to go through intermediaries. You go straight to the people, call them up on WhatsApp, on their mobile phone, send them a message. They respond immediately, and it's been fantastic.
So speaking from, I suppose, then the position of a country which serves as an example to others, what do you think needs to be done in other countries to foster better public-private collaboration?
Yeah, the issue is not all biotech companies are successful. Mm-hmm. Not all drug development programs are successful. Not all development programs where money is spent, public money is spent, are successful. So that's where it starts to get complicated. In this case, it was a quick decision was needed, but usually these processes take months to go through. We have a group of people that check the applications, they make sure they're correct, and now all work was focused on this particular disease. If there are tons of other diseases and tons of other projects and companies, there's the overwhelming amount of work to check these applications, take away the focus, and take a long time. So the problem is, in this case, to come to the point, is that these government agencies are happy to spend money and develop drugs, but they don't know if it's going to be promising, if they're spending it in the right amount, because the pots are not full. They need money for education, for all sorts of other things where government spending is needed, and therefore they have to be very selective, and this takes time. And that's why I think some things could be improved, in particular, to make sure that there are enough people working in this field, that there's enough money, and effectively, if we would have realized that this pandemic was coming, the effect on the global economy, it's been said $5 trillion has been wiped off worldwide. If only a fifth of that money would have been spent to healthcare, things might have been different.
Do you believe that the fallout from this pandemic and the greater consciousness around personal health will result in increased investment in biotechnology and scientific research as a whole, both in terms of private and public interest?
No, I don't think so. I think more money will be spent into public health, being hospitals, being staff, which are vitally needed, certain countries, let's look at Southern European countries in particular, who were most affected by this pandemic, or even the UK, where the health system is, I wouldn't say as strong as other countries like Austria and Germany, but it's just not as strong. So money will need to be spent in these systems. I think that will be a very important investment. And the European Union has already seen this requirement. As to biotech companies in particular, it's always very difficult because these are privately held companies and they're not public, meaning public owned by the government as opposed to publicly quoted. And if they are privately owned, then certain people in government authorities say, why should we support a company who is owned by private individuals and they will benefit from it? So possibly a solution would be to set up more hubs, to set up more awareness of biotechnology in the countries involved here, and to set up task force to say, look, we've got to promote biotechnology. What could we do with a lot of money? What could we achieve? And obviously, that's something that we would need to strengthen.
Can you tell us a little bit about Aperion's work in oncology treatment?
Yeah, certainly. It's quite funny, actually, because if we would have spoken 6 months ago, we wouldn't have talked about COVID-19, and we would have mostly talked about our oncology pipeline, because that was our main focus. And then suddenly this disease came up, and we realized that we had a drug to treat COVID-19. And suddenly this has become the main focus of the company. But the other projects are still ongoing. There are teams working on oncology in particular. We've developed a drug, as you said, to treat pediatric neuroblastoma, which was approved in 2017 in the EU. And we've also got checkpoint inhibitors, which basically enhance the immune system to kill cancer, but also other new immune oncology projects, which are still in early stages. So we've got a whole team of scientists working on the future, we think, of cancer treatment. One of the most important things is being passionate. Being passionate about what you do. Feel your job in such a way that when you do your job, you enjoy it. And this leading by example has always been something which has helped me lead teams to maximum performance. Because if you feel you're enjoying yourself and if you like doing it, then you're always prepared to give that further inch or further yard or whatever to do what you think is important to help out. Number two is obviously the team playership. If the team doesn't work, nothing works. It's a bit like football. You know, it's not much point having a good goalkeeper, no striker. You need a combination of all efforts, and everybody has to be able to feel as valuable as the other. And you don't say, "God, that's the accountant, he doesn't know much," or the scientist. No, it's all. Everybody plays a role in this team, and that's very important for leadership to understand that, to take everybody seriously. And finally, focus. I think focus for me is one of the most difficult things to achieve if you have so many things to do. So you need to really focus on the thing in hand at that moment in time and not got sidetracked or whatever, even though it does happen all the time. But I think those are the three most important things for me in leadership.